Due to unforeseen circumstances, namely Chaos forgetting to start the recording, there is no Winter Wonder Wasteland Session 7 audio to be listened to. Instead, Chaos has prepared this detailed summary for me to read out in place of the actual session, which will also serve as our session recap for Session 8, Lucid Nightmares. We picked up where we left off, just as the party hurried out of the back door to the observatory with their newly discovered party member. After a bit of deliberation, we entrusted Featherdance with her laser rifle again, and set out to the ruined shantytown we passed earlier on the way to the Crystal Pass, hopefully looking for a new shelter. The town labelled Snowdrift was empty except for an almost non-existent building which sheltered the familiar faces of the Fallen Sky group, as well as a travelling merchant. The two parties exchanged information about what they had seen so far, Fallen Sky informing them about the blockade cutting them off from the eastern section of the frozen north, and Snowy Stable explaining why the Crystal Pass had suffered a rather rocky blockage itself. We neglected to reveal Featherdance's true origins, but Crimson and Sapphire also had to convince the stranded Enclave Mare to join the others. She was hesitant to do so given that two members of Fallen Sky were outcasts from the Enclave, otherwise known as Dashites. The two succeeded when Sapphire bought a Parker from the merchant, a Crystal Empire original, and convinced the Mare to temporarily swap it for her armour. The two groups then proceeded to discuss plans to reach the Empire, whittling it down to 3 courses of action: travel through the mountains and hope they come out the other side, go for a full-throttle charge on the blockade or attack the Sacri leader hiding at the Raider border camp. At this point, the merchant let slip that he was a member of the Sacri League, and he explained to the groups that the Raiders were far too organised for that, structured more like an army than a group of idiotic killers. When pressed, he also explained the different factions of this army, 7 different groups, one for each of the 7 deadly sins, and each headed by a tough leader, with Sloth being the one stationed at the border camp. He also rewarded the players for killing Golden Eyes, who apparently had gone rogue and a bounty placed on his head. Meanwhile, Swallowtails was also able to identify the origin of the stationery the party had discovered at the entrance to Starlight Stable, a train station to the south called Snowfall Station. Before they could decide their next course of action, Featherdance took notice of one of the special items in Greed Merchant's possession, a flaming sword known as a shish kebab, which the Enclave Mare expressed an immediate desire for. When asked for a price, the merchant instead demanded that he would only trade it for an equally valuable piece of Stable-Tech equipment. With that in mind, players settled down for the night. The next morning, the party headed out for the station. Along the way, they were able to get a glimpse of the blockade, a huge line of multicoloured tents making it seemingly impenetrable barrier. The train station, however, seemed far more welcoming, at least by the wasteland standards of welcoming. Small mountains of pilfered suitcases and several skeletons, a handful of which seemingly crystallized over the past 200 years. Crimson found a keycard on one of the bodies, while Silver found a tripwire mine in the hard way inside the building. Danson tried to disarm them the normal way to little success, and in the end Nick set the mines off from a safe distance with telekinetically controlled knives. The terminal they found inside revealed another pre-war story. This one about an immigration officer working at the station and his encounter with a strange man named Black Dawn, who was preaching about something called the Great Shadow. The final message ominously read, "Long live the King." Though Silver was unimpressed and added his own message to the terminal, warning anyone who found it to be careful and stay safe. The terminal also unlocked a nearby floor safe, which contained several magical crystals and a pamphlet, written by the odd Mare Black Dawn. On the back was a message, a series of numbers followed by the message, "Try not to get left behind, Sugar Rush." With nothing else left in the station for them, the group then moved on to the Starlight in the hopes that the series of numbers would serve as a password to access the stable in the town. Starlight seemed a bit worse for wear they last arrived, as the pews inside the Chapel of Scales were tossed about the room as though a tornado had blown through. The basement remained untouched, however, and they were able to successfully enter the stable at the expense of Crimson's stolen keyboard keys. The group now stands in the darkness of the stable. The massive door